I've been going down a rabbit hole. You know, religion, I don't know why. I can't explain it to you. But religion is just violent. I mean, I'm going to do a couple different videos about different things. Right now, I'm going to bring up the roots of terrorism with the IDF, with religious fanaticism in Israel. But I'm also going to talk about, I'm going to do a video about the French massacre of Protestants in France by Catholics. And then I'm also going to talk about the massacre of Catholics by Protestants in Britain. Ironically, it's actually the war between Protestants and Britons that the Tories and the Whigs are born out of. Actually, the whole Parliament, it really got its power because of the bloodshed between Protestants and Catholics. That's an amazing story. Then we have here in America, you know, we have the First Amendment for freedom of religion, yet that, you know, people think that's subjective, you know, like, for example, you know, even though we had the freedom of religion, if you were, you know, an American Indian practicing your religion, and, you know, that wasn't religious, that was a cult. So, you know, we pick and choose what's religious. So, you know, it's every religion around, but the Abrahamic religions are just violent. You know, the whole problem with Israel is people are watching what it's doing with just bombing women and children, and you know, we're not talking, you know, I'm completely, I'm not saying that Israel does not have a right to go in and hunt down Hamas. That is not what I'm saying. What Hamas did, like I said, it's crazy. This is all about religion. When what Hamas did is just as bad. You know, they went in and they murdered women, children, and it's time for someone to put on the big boy pants and be the adult in the room here. But we can't expect it from Israel either, because you need to understand what the IDF is actually born out of. It's very hard to find this information, because anything that has to do with Jewish terrorism, it is whitewashed. It is very hard to find anything about Jewish terrorism. But the IDF is actually born out of Haganah. Haganah was a special ops group in it and everything. It even had an elite strike group, but it was a terrorist group. You know, there's one of the things you can find online is the Haganah, the Israeli Defense Forces now, but originally it was Haganah. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. It's spelled Haganah. It might have a H in it because, you know, it might be in the pronunciation. But anyway, in 1939, in the village of Lubia, a couple villagers, don't know exactly how many, just what I can find, some villagers murdered apparently a Jewish man, and all he was doing was walking down the street. So, Yigal Alan, who was the head of Pamak, that was the elite strike group, later on he became the IDF general, and he also became a foreign minister. He led a group into Lubia in the middle of the night. And they went into a house and they murdered the family in cold blood in the middle of the night in their sleep. They murdered the husband, they murdered the wife, and they murdered the children in the middle of the night as revenge for what some other villagers did to a Jewish man walking down the street. This is the IDF ideology that it's born out of. That's the problem. And like I said, this seems to be common amongst all religions: Christians, Catholics, Jews, Muslims. All the Abrahamic religions are just really violent. It's amazing how violent they are. The whole thing was organized by Nahum Shami. He was later an IDF colonel. Also involved was Mapai, M-A-P-A-I, Mapai. He was the forerunner of the Israeli Labor Party, and his son Isaac was the commander of the border police brigade. And don't even get started on what they did in 1956 in Kfar Qassam. It was just, they call it the massacre. It's just complete bloodletting, apparently. And, but they have other things that they've just, for example, Haganah. One night, British officer William Bruce in the city of Jerusalem, 1946, just walking down the street in the night, minding his own business, taking in the sight. They just murdered him in cold blood. British officer William Bruce, in the middle of the night, just in the middle of the street, just murdered him in cold blood in the middle of the street. And then there was also, this was actually another Israeli terrorist group known as Lehi, L-E-H-I. In November 1946, they just assassinated the British Minister of State, Lord Moyne. And it's not just British people that they went after, and it's not just Muslims that they go after. In June 1967, they flew over AGTR-5, Liberty vessel. That's an American ship flying an American flag. Americans, they're all just relaxing, they're taking in the sun, they're, just enjoying the day. They see the surveillance plane fly over, they recognize it as an Israeli plane, they wave up to it, the pilots wave down to them. There's audio recordings of them, this first contact, and they report the American vessel. They actually say it's an American vessel. And actually, to make sure that they were recognized, the American vessel took down their regular flag and they put up what was called the holiday flag. It's this really big flag. It's usually what they fly when they come into port in America, when they're coming back home. They fly this really big flag, it's a big, prominent, proud flag. So they put that up. 9 hours goes by, and occasionally these IDF surveillance plane comes over them, they wave, and pilots wave back, and there's recordings multiple times. It's an American vessel. Then they just swoop in and attack. They open fire on the American vessel. Their ally, Israel, our ally, opens fire on us. They sent in a gunship using armor-piercing bullets. They murdered 35 American troops, sailors. I'm sure there's probably some Marines among them. It's not uncommon to have a couple Marines on a vessel. This was a spy vessel, so I'm not sure about that, but it's not a stretch of the mind to think that there were some Marines on the vessel. But they just murdered 35 Americans. They acknowledged that it was an American vessel. They had to be able to block the signal, they had our codes because we gave them our codes. They were the only people, the only country in all of the Middle East that had our codes. They used our frequency codes to block our frequencies so that we could not make a distress call. They sent in a gunner ship. They sent in a torpedo ship. This whole thing. They injured over 120 others. By the time all said and done, 2/3 of the crew was dead or injured, lying in pools of blood. The ship was a complete... It was just... there's pictures of this thing. It's full of bullet holes. It's got this huge torpedo hole in it. Then they blackmailed President Johnson. I'm no fan of President Johnson, so the fact that I'm saying something bad about President Johnson does not faze me one bit. I think he was the worst president in American history, and this just goes to show what a failure of a leader he actually was, because he allowed our ally to blackmail him after they murdered 35 of our troops. He sent our NSA, people from our NSA, sent them to the homes of all the victims and made sure that none of them could leave and talk to the press and tell the press what happened. Meanwhile, our ship was sent to, was it Morocco or Monaco? I think it was Morocco. Sent there. He made sure that the order was in, that everything was paid, everything was done. The ship got a complete makeover so that when it came into the American port, everybody was like, oh, it wasn't that bad. Look at the ship. The ship looks like brand new. How bad could it have been? It took 2 months to repair the ship. That's how bad it was. They carried body after body after body off the ship. It was just... So, Israel has a bad habit of just... not caring about its allies, really. I mean, it has good relations with its allies, and I'm not saying the Israeli people. This is its government that I'm talking about. But this is what its government is born out of. Its government is born out of a terrorist group. Actually, it's born out of a couple terrorist groups. Because there's a third one, I forgot the name of that. There's and then there's Haganah, and there's a third group. But the majority of the original, especially the IDF, most of its members are Haganah, which is an Israeli terrorist group. It's the Israeli version of Hezbollah, which is a government-backed terrorist group. Hamas, actually, Haganah and Hamas are probably more alike. Hezbollah is a little bit more on par with the IDF. But yeah, Haganah, the original IDF, Haganah and Hamas, they're pretty much the same. They're government terrorist groups. So, and like I said, I'm not saying this just to simply beat on the Israeli government. Because like I said, I'm going to do a couple other videos, and I'm going to talk about, the massacre of, like I said, there's the history with between Protestants and Catholics. I mean, and then that ain't even putting in the evangelists and Lutherans and Mormons and regular Christians and children of Abraham are just violent.